Whether you're a CEO, a leader, a mom at home, like whatever your situation is, everybody has to deal with pressures. And when we live in a system where we try to control nonstop the external factors in our lives, that's the delusion. The real factors where we can have control over are within us. And if we forget to work on those aspects of ourselves, we'll never be able to have as much relationship with our environment and with people around us.
This is the Conscious Economics Podcast, and I'm your host, Rhiannon Rosalind. This is the place where we explore people, planet, profit, and art through the lens of the new economy. If you're interested in changing yourself, getting more creative, or changing the system at large, then this is the podcast for you. Tune in every other week as we explore these topics with amazing guests. We'll go deep, we'll go heart-centered and soul-felt as we go into how we change ourselves and change the world. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Conscious Economics Podcast. I'm your host, Rhiannon Rosalind, and I am so excited for today's episode because I got to sit down with Sophie Grégoire Trudeau. I know many of you are familiar with Sophie and her incredible work, but just to kind of give you a bit of the formal background, Sophie is an engaged advocate for gender equality and a mother of 3 children. And over the past 15 years, she's been involved with a variety of causes as a speaker and a mentor, including teenage self-esteem, women's and girls' rights and freedoms, eating disorders, and mental health. In this episode, we really go deep with Sophie around her own journey towards healing, wellness, consciousness, mental health, and she really doesn't hold back. She was so honest and candid. I've known her personally for a couple of years now because she's been a big supporter of the work that I was doing through the Junior Economic Club and now, of course, through Conscious Economics. And you'll hear me tell her in the episode that whenever I'm in her energy, there's just such an alignment. It's the way that she shows up. It's the presence that she brings to a space, the authenticity. And again, a lot of the times when we think of people that are in public roles and public serving roles, it feels like there's almost this requirement that people have to try to sort of be authentic. And sometimes it's not always genuine. With Sophie, it is genuine. I mean that from the bottom of my heart. The work that she does and the way she engages with it comes from her heart. And so I think that's why we had such an incredible conversation here, because she did not hold back. And it really couldn't have been a more perfect episode for the Conscious Economics Podcast, because we go deep into why pursuing our own consciousness, our own self-actualization will be the solution to creating better economic systems, better education systems, and really dismantling patriarchy and healing our society. And so I am just so thrilled and honored. I really do hope you enjoy this wonderful episode with Sophie Grégoire Trudeau. Sophie, it's such an honor for me to have you here on the Conscious Economics Podcast. And, I want to anchor this conversation for you so you really understand I'm not having you here because you are Sophie, who is the Prime Minister's wife and this great woman who's doing all these incredible things. I really wanted you here because of you. I've obviously had the opportunity to work with you and be in your energy over the years. You've supported different projects that we've been doing. And one of the things that always brings me to presence in your presence is your heart and the energy that you bring into a space. It's very real. It's not something that can be made up. I was so moved by it the first time that I met you, at the level of attention and how much care you gave to all of the people in the room. We were launching something with a wonderful group of young people from Nunavut, and you stayed until the very end to shake every single young person's hand, even though you had somewhere else to be. And I just thought, wow, that's the real deal. This person, this woman is somebody I want to know. And when we do this Conscious Economics Podcast, it's a container for us to explore leaders who are leading with heart, who are leading with the personal work first, getting their own alignment right before they're going out into the world. And you are that. And so this is the deepest honor, not because of the accolades of who you are, but literally about just who you are in your essence, in your spirit. I see it so strongly. So thank you.
Are we starting this interview with tears? Because the first word you used when you said, it's my honor, when I hear that, I'm an only child. And for me, the other is a source of solace. It's a source of nourishment. And my whole happiness and my health, physically and emotionally, depends on the relationships that I sustain with others. So I'll take the compliment that you're right. There's no bullshit with me. Sorry that I'm using these words, but that's what it is. And I decided a long time ago, because I suffered from eating disorders when I was younger, which is also a disease of the emotions. So many addictions and compulsions are diseases of the emotions. But I decided to do the work. I decided to say, okay, my body and my mind and my life is trying to tell me something. I'm going to go and dive deep, and it's going to hurt like a, but I'm going to do it. So when you tell me this, it makes me cry, because in some ways it means that the work is paying off. Because when people feel your integrity and give you trust, there's nothing more to ask. It's there, and that is immovable. It is unshakable in so many ways. And we need that so much in our economic systems. We need it in our organizations, in our schools, in our companies, in our households, obviously, where everything starts, and within ourselves too. So I think you and I recognized each other. It took about, 5 minutes? Many, many years ago when we met. So I think you surround with people who do hold a lot of authenticity in their personality. And I think that also is kind of like the riverbed for more justice in this world, so that people know how to hold themselves, understand themselves, so we can go towards other people and form groups, leadership, and organizations that reflect that integrity.
100%. And you've said it so perfectly. And that's why I started conscious economics, because I was like, this consciousness that we apply to the path of our inner work is exactly what we need to do at large within society, within our economic systems, within our political systems, within our structures. It's all of us doing that work and building a new system from that space. And when people hear the word consciousness, sometimes they don't exactly know what that means. And it's just another way to say a deeper awareness. And when we have that deeper awareness of ourselves and even how sometimes we're perpetuating the things that we don't want in our lives. And with you being so open about the eating disorder and the things that you've struggled with, we can all see that you're on your path. You emanate and radiate that you are on the path of healing. And it's an ongoing path. It's not like we just get there and get to a destination, but you've actively pursued the path. And did you have a specific moment? Was it a rock bottom around the eating disorder, or a moment when you just got fed up with yourself? Can you identify that?
Yeah, well, first of all, I just want to say that this doesn't make me unique. If there's one lesson I've learned, is that we're all one trauma away from one another. So it takes one traumatic life event to kind of turn your life, your brain, your heart around, and I'm that person who I thought was struggling, that it would never happen to me. So I think a lot of people who might be listening have hit some type of rock bottom in their life, or a very difficult patch. And yes, you know what? Unfortunately, sometimes and most of the time, our pain is our greatest teacher. But in our culture, where we live so quickly, we haven't learned to sit with the pain. So it's very scary for us to feel the hurt and to be with pain. For me, when I found myself at one point suffering from my eating disorder, I was sad, I was crying, I was trembling. And in that moment, it's like I detached myself from myself. And it's as if the little Sophie in me, or the parent in me, or the greater presence in me kind of held me together and said, you know what? You don't have to suffer like this anymore. And things changed from there, because I asked for help. There's no way we can deal with our pain. There's no way this fractured and broken system in which we live can deal with the pain of individuals if we do it alone. We're not going to get out of it.
Well, and there's nothing that we can do that will ever mask it. Again, I think it's the delusion of our current economy is that we can buy our way out of feeling the pain, or we can purchase a product or go on an experience and somehow we can override it. But the truth is that it always finds us, and all it really wants to do is be seen and to be loved. And then all of a sudden that skeleton in the closet isn't so scary anymore. It's when we're trying to ignore it that it becomes louder and louder and shows up as anxiety or addiction or some of these other things. And I'm speaking as someone who's done their work. I've done my work and I'm continuing to do my work.
Well, I'm not done, baby. I'm far from done.
That's what I'm saying. No, none of us are done. It's applying this principle that maybe this is the solution, that, each of us doing our own conscious work to come back to our real alignment with our true self and our true power allows us to create the world that we long for. And I really think that you're someone that exemplifies that. And I want to go to this question because I can really recognize this in someone. And so our listeners are used to me speaking in this way. But I really feel your heart chakra whenever I'm around you in particular. So much so, you envelop whoever's around you in this heart energy. And our heart has this higher intelligence. There's science to it. It's not a woo-woo thing to say. And when our heart chakra and our heart energy is opened and we're in aligned with it, the world and the energy that surrounds us opens up in this different way. And you have that even in the way you radiate. So your energy, your smile, the way that you can laugh and have fun, even though you're in this position that's so serious, but you're coming as so yourself in this comfort. And I wanted to know, what do you do? What does your daily practice look like? How are you staying this open and in this alignment? It's got to be challenging given the role that you're in. And so I just wonder, if you can give us a little peek into your daily practice, your monthly practice. What is it? I know you're a yogi, but, tell us a little bit about that.
All right. Well, my answer comes in two kind of segments. The first one is, I think a lot of the perception is, oh, she's someone's wife. First of all, nobody's someone's wife. Let's make that clear. No woman is someone's wife. So that's not the way I perceive myself at all. The position that I'm in, I see it as a responsibility. I don't care about titles. I've met people with the most important titles in the world. And if you start believing in your title, you're pretty much doomed. So I think title, power, position, if you reverse it, for me, it's responsibility towards myself first and then towards others. And I grew up in a family where if I kind of for a moment thought I was really like, haha, I'm so good or whatever, I was brought down like back to earth, like, hey, love, like chill, you're special, but you're not, nobody's that unique and special. So I think that this kind of healthy self-deprecating and also lots of humor, lots of playfulness, the playfulness of the child in one's life and as an adult is necessary to stay healthy. So that's the first response that I wanted to kind of like put out there. But the second one, coming back to the work that I do and to the practice, when you talk about the heart chakra, for me, that is very familiar language because I've studied the chakras, and because I became a certified yoga teacher and I'm continuing my education all the time. I also teach a little bit of meditation and yoga nidra. But in order to do all this, the only way I can share with others is if I experience it. So discipline, discipline, and discipline. In the worst moments, when I want to cry nonstop, I show up on my mat. I go out in nature, even if it's 10 minutes a day. So I have the luxury of being able to have a more flexible schedule sometimes. So I'll be very disciplined, packing in time, even if it's a short amount of time, or if I'm traveling, I'll have my yoga mat with me. I'll have my app on my phone. I practice at least 15 minutes every day minimum of meditation, yoga nidra, or yoga. And then when I have an hour somewhere, that's the biggest luxury of all, and I'll do it. So I've been trained in my life to move my body, to be very physical and to push my physical boundaries, which allowed me today and through the years to push my psychological boundaries at the same time. You cannot have a cool mind and a warm body. That doesn't just come to you. You have to work at it like a relationship.
I love that. And it's so appropriate as we're on this Virgo full moon today when we meet. And that's so about the mind body connection. And it is so true. You cannot have that cool, collected mind when you don't have that same balance within the body, or vice versa. This is another thing that, at Conscious Economics, we're really trying to help leaders understand that the pressures of leadership in any role, whether you're a CEO or you're a major public figure, it's very intense. And if without that practice, we just can't hold and occupy that space. So it's very apparent to me when I'm in your energy. Like, I actually feel like there's a fresh breeze of nature when you come around. Like, I can feel it in your aura. Like, it's just, I'm like, I've now had a walk. And like, it's just beautiful. So it's very felt.
That's the best compliment I've ever gotten. I love that.
It's
I love that. Thank
true.
you.
It's so true. So I just know that you're doing it because I can feel it. And for all of our listeners here, we're really trying to incorporate these practices into our lives. So I love that you said that sometimes it's 15 minutes. It's whatever you can get in. But even that is enough to change vibration, to change frequency. Even the 15 minutes of showing up for yourself.
Whether you're a CEO, a leader, a mom at home, like whatever your situation is, everybody has to deal with pressures. And when we live in a system where we try to control nonstop the external factors in our lives, that's the delusion. The real factors where we can have control over are within us. And if we forget to work on those aspects of ourselves, we'll never be able to have as much relationship with our environment and with people around us. And this, for me, is what leadership is about: relationship. Like parenting, not a role, it's a relationship. Husband and wife, it's not a role, it's a relationship. CEO, it's not a role, it's a relationship. The one thing that human beings need the most on this planet for their nervous system to be healthy and for disease to not set in is human connection. We need it from cradle to grave. We cannot survive without it. A baby left by itself cannot survive because we need the touch, we need the connection, we need the eye contact. So no wonder in an age where we've learned to process so rapidly information, relationships, food, everything comes kind of at a quick pace in the modern, quote unquote, modern world. It leaves us so little time to focus on our internal factors that we can control that we forget that that part is so important that we feel that we're not at home within our own selves in our workplaces, because that work has to be done by the people who lead the others. It is necessary. It's crucial work that we haven't been educated yet on emotional literacy. It's starting though.
It is starting. It's a new day. It's a new era. I really believe it's a new chapter. Even when I first launched Conscious Economics, and this was before the pandemic, people kind of looked at me like I had lost my mind a little bit. And now it feels like people are starting to really understand. And it was one of the positive things that came out of a very difficult time during the pandemic. And I don't want to ever breeze over how difficult this time has been for everybody on different levels and intersectionally. But it was also a time for us to really see what was underneath the rug. And these things that were there were always there, but now they surfaced. And more I'm seeing leaders and CEOs and policymakers and young people more interested in learning how to regulate their emotional authority and how to understand these different aspects of self. And I keep saying, I'm all for technology. I believe in a blend of technology, but there's also human technology that we need to understand. Like this beautiful body, this beautiful mind, this beautiful heart. This is an equipment that we get to have this human experience in, and we have so much to learn about it. So it makes me sort of wave into a project that you've been involved. You came out and supported our Heartwork project recently last fall. And this is a project that we're leading. It's a national 3-year project all around advancing women within corporate Canada specifically. And one of the things we did in the first year of the project is we invited all of these incredible community partners, C Centre for Young Black Professionals, the Indigenomics Institute, Canadian Arab Institute, and we went out and we spoke to women in these anonymous containers where they could be be honest and really tell us what was going on for them. And we were able to extrapolate some really interesting data around why women are opting out of leadership positions within corporate Canada. It's not the other way around. It's not a pipeline thing. It's not a whatever. It's women deciding, I don't want to pursue leadership positions because this is out of balance. There's something out of alignment. It's even deeper when we go intersectionally, when we're talking to Indigenous women, when we're talking to Black women, when we're talking to other racialized women. There is a lack of authenticity that is felt so deeply that the generation current that's in the middle is not interested in going up. And that's a real problem that we want to solve, but we can't solve it without understanding the truth. And it's been really eye-opening to hear what's really come to the surface through this project. And a lot of what you said came up here. So it is around this consciousness or a lack thereof and a lack of emotional intelligence. It's like we can't box tick and put policy around emotional issues. Like we have to bring more of this, I think, into our corporate infrastructure, all of our different educational infrastructure. So what I'm really asking you, and I'm not asking you to solve this problem, but could you comment a little bit about what you feel? You are a mother, you are someone who leads a very important and busy schedule. What do you think it's going to take for women to feel as though these places of work and business are actually in alignment for the way we want to live and be?
You said it when you introduced this question. My answer would be, at large, to face our truth. To face our truth is probably the hardest thing we'll ever do in a lifetime, as individuals and as a society. Now, there's no way we can talk about what surrounds the answer to your question without talking about patriarchy. And many years ago on International Women's Day, I wanted to bring in the men in our lives who support us, who understand, who are willing to do the work. And I got slapped on the hand because I was told it's not the right time to bring men on this day, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, funny enough, through the years, we're starting to talk about how toxic masculinity is really hurting men. Now, patriarchy has encouraged, and I would say almost loved, and I'm quoting Liz Plank here, who has a podcast called Man Enough.
Yeah, and her book, For the Love of Men.
She says patriarchy loves a damaged woman. And you know what? If you look pretty much everywhere around the world, aren't you finding out that women are depleted, overworked, taking care and being the nucleus of the family, and trying to get out there on the job market because there's so much natural leadership, there's so much emotional awareness, there's so much potential talent, beauty, intelligence, and wisdom to be shared with the world, and creativity. But what we have lived through a patriarchal system is the embodiment of that creativity, which comes quite naturally to women, not only because we have children and because that's a creative act. That's not what I mean at all. It's more in our presence, in how we're biologically programmed to nurture as well. So we've kind of swam against our own current, and that's a resistance mode. Now, when we are in resistance mode, we're not creating. The only way to change the system is to become our creative selves once again. This means partly breaking down the old patriarchal structures that no longer serve women and men, and then educating ourselves on what it means to be a sensing and feeling human being, because we are thinking beings, but before that, we are sensing beings. So we've kind of had the equation upside down for quite a long time. And we all know that we're paying the price for this, and there's so much suffering going on. But a system that is broken is also an opportunity for change. So I think education will be not only key, but paramount into bringing more awareness to people, to leaders, to the global entrepreneur world, which is still dominated by men. I think that a lot of countries are turning around and making more space for women to, one, enter the workforce, two, have systems where they can have children and be in the workforce. But it's still so rare when you look at the big lens and when you face that truth. Obviously, equal pay and child support and all of that. But the huge answer, I think, is really education. I think that we've been teaching our little humans that we adore math and physics and chemistry and history, which is great. But if we don't teach them how to understand their emotions, how to regulate their emotional cycles, and how to come in contact safely with themselves and with another human being, if we have that as a basis, that's going to be very different. Don't forget this. The pandemic is one example, but all of our nervous systems on planet Earth are pretty much in alert mode. It's not our fault. It comes from my childhood bond of attachment, how we were taken care of as a child. Our parents did the best they could with the emotional tools that they had. Climate change, economic disparity, war, conflict, all of that. Our human brains haven't changed in 200,000 years,
Yeah.
but it has to adapt to
Yeah.
very different conditions. So our alert mode is beep, beep, beep all the time. We can't handle that anymore.
The Conscious Economics podcast is brought to you by CPP Investments, manager of the Canada Pension Plan Fund. Canadians can be confident in the fund's sustainability. CPP Investments has earned more than $300 billion in the last 10 years and has more than $500 billion invested around the world. The Canada Pension Plan is set to provide a retirement income foundation for generations to come. To learn more, visit cppinvestments.com. Everything that you've just said here, I mean, it's like you could be reading out of my own journal in my reflections on these things, which again, and this is not, oh, we're somebody special. This information is becoming available now. And what I mean by that is we are evolving to such a level that this information, we can ride this wave, and many of us are starting to come on it. And it's the same. I always think about creativity, great songs that are written. It's like they come through the ethers and then they channel through. And I really believe that we're at this time right now where this particular frequency of conversation that we're having is coming through because we've exhausted all other options. And so it really is that. And of course, yes, it's going to start with education and how we raise our young, and actually coming back to some of the things that we poo-pooed before, and oh, this wasn't evolved, or women in the workforce. And we forgot about the nurturing of the mother and child and how important that is. We forgot about putting our hands in the soil and planting some of our own food. And we forgot about some of these basics that it's not we have to go back to being a pioneer. It's we integrate the modern with what the ancient knowing is to evolve into this new space. And that really, I'm so excited that you're writing something about this because, again, you embody this in the way that you show up. And it's so the resonance is so deep because you're living it. And I think that it's exactly what we need. And at Conscious Economics, we say it's people, planet, profit, and art. That's the conscious economy. And so the creativity piece being central. And art, again, when you talk to an accountant, they may not realize the artistic aspect of what they can do. It's all about being in that creative mindset and being able to channel that through. And it's not life without creativity. Like that is our purpose here, is to be creator beings. And so it's just, again, we're at such a time where there can be such beautiful change. I hold that in my heart so deeply. And I want to be a part of whatever that is. And I look back to, I was with the Economic Club for 14 years and I was doing 100 events a year across the country in very, very buttoned down business environment. I present very feminine. I was young in the position. And so I adopted such a masculine approach to everything that I couldn't attune myself to my babies when I would get home. I really couldn't come back down to the energy of my house. It took me a long time to unwind, and I wasn't very present for my kids. Even though I was physically there, I wasn't attuned to them in the way that I wanted to be. And it actually wasn't until the pandemic when I was, again, I am leading a live events organization and I'm pushed into my house. My business is kind of coming undone. I've got 2 young children that I'm now homeschooling, and I'm having a hard time imagining how I'm going to spend this much time with my kids because I was so out of alignment. Why I'm bringing it up, and I'm being very raw and honest here, we put so much pressure on ourselves as women to be it all, to be everything in business and then be a perfect mother and a perfect partner and all of these things. But I was trying so hard to do everything, and I was forgetting just to be. I was forgetting to breathe. I was forgetting to come back and really ask myself, why am I pushing so hard over here? Am I really accomplishing the goals that I'm trying? Am I really doing it, or am I doing it because there's some urge in me that tells me that I have to do this or I need to be seen? And quite honestly, I fell so in love with my children over that time in being at home with them. And I fell so in love with that feminine part of myself again that I sold the economic club. And I've focused now on conscious economics. And again, because we don't have to chase things all of the time. Sometimes we just have to be in flow. And that does not mean I'm not ambitious or I don't want, it doesn't mean that.
I love it. And it's so honest. And I think it's necessary for people to hear this because you were doing your best to fit into a system. Now, we all try to do that because we're sold a system and a way of doing things. And there's lots of great things in there, but there's also delusions and there's also a cycle of reactivity. So when you look at the economics of this world, it's a very reactive form of economics because the world markets, the behaviors, the ups and downs, the crashes, which is kind of part of the natural cycle of life in itself. But at the same time, we humans are reacting to that system constantly instead of steering it consciously. Now, you talked about presence. Most moms are overworked, don't know how to pay for everything that they need for their children. Not all moms have a partner who can help. And when they do, sometimes that partner is not always ready to put in the time and the energy. So there's a huge education component there. We have to let go of the guilt. First, we have to let go of the guilt as mothers, as entrepreneurs, as women in business of trying and having to do it all. It does not exist. I wish I'm a feminist, I'm a humanist, I'm an inclusive human being, but we're thriving towards ideals that are lies. And you know what? They're making us sick and we deserve better. So, how do you slow down a system that's going so fast, right? We feel overwhelmed. How do us as consumers, as moms, as entrepreneurs, as CEOs, as leaders, how do we affect that system? It really does start at home. And when you said that you ran economic club like a bull, and those are often qualities associated with masculinity, although masculinity has a very tender, beautiful, and deep listening side as well, you were reacting to a system. So, and then when you came back home, you were saying that you never felt so in love with your kids because you were present. Now, if I had one word to actually eat up and meditate on and dance in a circle around, and it would be presence, because we've lost our natural ability to be in silence, to be present, to be in true connection, in true intimacy with life itself, with ourselves as well, and therefore with other people. And it's making us quite unhappy. We don't need sexual relationships in order to thrive in life. And look where I'm going with this, because love has also become so important, and dating and swiping and who am I going to end up with and who am I going to date and am I going to attach myself or not? The truth, facing our truth, and all of the scientists that I interviewed for writing the book that I'll talk about later, maybe in a couple of months with you again, has to do with the fact that it's not really our fault in one sense of the word, because when we are children, as I said, we come into this world and these children become the leaders and the CEOs of this world. Watch where I'm going. So the child needs an adult, so a parent, a caregiver, whoever, to make them feel like their perception of reality is real. To send them back a signal that you're safe, you're loved, you're accepted. No matter what you do, you're loved. A lot of us didn't get that in childhood because we still were dealing with generations who had so much suppressed emotions. and came from a system of toxic masculinity. That wired our brains in a way that we carry that hardwiring through all of our relationships as adults. And some of them are unconscious, even because the brain was wired that way, and our sense of safety is triggered. Am I being attacked by this person? Did that comment mean that I'm unworthy? How much more can I do as a leader? I'll never reach that goal. I'll never be good enough. So all those little voices come from our hard wirings of how we were attached to the main person who took care of us as a kid. Now, then plays the role of environment and life situations and whatever you went through in your teenage years and young adult years. But we need to understand that part of our lives before we try to heal everything in therapy.
100%. Or think we can heal the world with doing good or taking on more events or all of these programs. And you're so right. And it's doing our inner child work. And I know that sounds so wild to people who haven't explored that, but that inner child is showing up in the boardroom. That inner child is showing up in the household. It's all there. And again, using myself as an example and outing myself, I was so addicted to awards and accolades because it was my only sense of worth that I was getting, because underneath it, I was that unworthy child who came from a broken home, who was living on my own at 15, who all the things. And so, it wasn't until I faced that inner part of me that felt so unloved and so broken and held it, just like you did with the eating disorder, and said, I'm not leaving you now. Like, I'm going to figure this out and we're going to heal. And a lot of us are on that rat wheel or that race to achieve, produce. To what end? There's no end. It's always the next thing and the next thing. And that's what's burning our nervous system to the ground, like you said. It's so true.
And we also live kind of in a new trend where self-care is being care for yourself, love yourself. Like, we have to be very conscious, and I'm choosing my word carefully here, that yes, obviously time for ourselves and facials and pedicures or going for a walk or whatever kind of self-care on that kind of superficial but important hygiene but I would say that we have to be careful here, because the true self-care is being aware of our patterns, being aware of why we act the way we do, why we come into contact with ourselves and others the way we do. That's the true self-care. And if the spa, the yoga, the meditation, the sports, the nutrition, and the sleep are all intertwined on that wheel, you can't keep an element out. Just like in a group, you'll have people who contribute to the energy in corporations and people who don't. And you have to deal with those elements. That's what life is. But as long as you're not aware of the dynamics of every single person in that group, you won't be able to fix them.
I mean, we're definitely on the same page, and so are our listeners. So the people that are listening to the show, the people that are engaging, are people that are really, truly interested in doing that inner work, because that is how we create that change on the outside. And I come to our Mindfulness and Money program. So, Sophie, while I was running the Economic Club for all those years, I was also running the Junior Economic Club. That you came out to many things. And for a long time, I was trying to do financial literacy work. So I was trying to teach young people who didn't have access, the bricks and mortar around saving, investing, and budgeting. And I did this work for about 10 years. And it finally occurred to me, I have access to all this information. I know all the budgeting, the tools. I know all the bankers on Bay Street. I understand how it all works. And I'm not even applying all of this. So where do I come off thinking that this actually works? And I really had a moment where I felt like I was not in my integrity anymore. And I outed myself. I wrote an article that was published in the Globe and Mail, and I exposed myself for someone who has deep financial trauma. The reason why my mom was beaten in our home was because it was around money. The reason why we had the lights turned off and the hydro turned off, it was around money. I had deep trauma around money. And this trauma was making me perpetuate things, even though I knew all the right answers and had all the right tools and was earning a great income. I had this subconscious belief around money that it was bad in some way. And so I would give it all away, essentially. I would just be constantly, it would come in and I would put it out to another program, to another this, to another that. Very, very much over frivolous with how I was putting it out because it didn't feel safe to hold it. It didn't feel like it was in alignment with what my subconscious belief was. So, over years of doing my own work, we developed through conscious economics a program called Mindfulness and Money. And what we're doing is we're helping people to understand how their subconscious beliefs and their unique patterns around how they grew up is impacting their relationship to money, finance, the economy. And this is really big, and people are really loving it. People are responding to it. We're having deep emotional conversations around money as opposed to what you would expect. And it's intertwined into everything. It's really, I say the economy is a reflection of a society's value system. And if we want to change that value system, it starts with doing that work. So I'm bringing this up because I wonder, in your upbringing, I know you're an only child like myself, and you have probably your own stories you grew up in, and you're clearly doing your work. What was your relationship to money early on? Do you reflect any subconscious narratives that you had to kind of reprogram?
That's an incredible question and conversation to have. It's so necessary because there's such, I would say mine with money is kind of a like a love hate. So I'm trying to find balance there. I'll explain why. So I grew up in a family, I'm an only child, and I grew up in a family. So my dad comes from, I would say financially stable family. My mom as well, but nothing big, nothing, there was no like a huge wealth or anything. And my dad started as a banker and he became a stockbroker, and he really climbed the ladder as a francophone in the stock market industry and all that. It was really different in those days. And it was very hard for him. He was a very hard worker. I grew up with a mom who was, I would say, emotionally and financially dependent of my dad. So at 13, I started working at a golf course in the summer. I wanted my own money. I wanted to become independent. And I think that seeing my mother suffer through her dependencies really triggered a deep sense of, I'm going to do this on my own. And obviously, when I moved out of my parents' place, I had my own apartment and I was making an okay salary, but not great. And working after that in radio and television, it was unstable because it was ups and downs. And sometimes you had contracts, sometimes you didn't. It created a lot of financial insecurity. It created emotional insecurity. I would sometimes think, oh my God, am I going to have to live with somebody because I can't afford this apartment by myself? And is it going to be a relationship? Is it going to be a friend? Like, what do I do? And then, I was on the beginning of that path, very beginning, as a young adult, to detach myself a little bit from the accumulation of objects around me. Clothes, jewelry, laptops, like name it, just objects, right? So the accumulation of wealth, something that scares me. I have a weird relationship to it. I know people who are extremely wealthy and who help out the world in measures that nobody else could, which is amazing. I know people who have no money and who help the world around them in ways that are absolutely incredible. So I see my kids growing up in a culture where the brands and the singers and the social media influencers is so much about looks and money and brands. And I'm just like, oh my God, I can't believe I'm going through this all over again. And when I'm mothering teenagers, so I see that there's such a healthy rebellion that has to happen in every single individual in order to differentiate ourselves from our parents and knowing that we're still loved. So I think I obviously went through that myself in different ways, maybe not enough, although I'm a little bit mischievous. But I think that the relationship to money is something that has to be looked into as much as our emotional relationship to ourselves. I think it's a crucial endeavor. By the way, I can't remember what the program is or what the foundation is or something, but something like the Bag Lady of Bay Street. I remember meeting somebody who was a super successful stockbroker in Toronto, and she started this program because most successful women still had ingrained, because of the culture, oh, I'm going to end up on the street. I won't be able to do this alone and to sustain all of this alone. And I'm going to end up with no money. it's still there behind a lot of people's minds. And a lot of mothers throughout this country can't even afford to be creative, to have the time to take care of themselves, to do everything that we're talking about right now is a luxury. Now that's where the problem lies. It can't be a luxury anymore. And fortunately enough, there's being historical amounts of money injected now by governments and all that into mental health areas that we've never seen before in this country. And that has to continue. That has to be the
Yes.
benchmark on which we're building.
Yeah, 100%. And really knowing that this relationship that we have to money and the economy is part of our mental health and well-being, and that it's intrinsically linked. And so, I mean, you've just been so generous with how much you've shared here. And I know you are involved in so many incredible initiatives. And first of all, I just want to say thank you. Thank you obviously for being here today, but thank you for being you. Thank you for the work you're doing, how you're showing up in the world. It's so important. It's so meaningful. I really, really do mean that from my heart. And I know you can feel that. So I wonder if you want to leave off with letting us know anything. I know you're saying you might be writing a book, and I know you probably can't say much more about that, but what projects or what organizations do you want to point our listeners to? Anything that's coming up that you're excited about that you'd like us to pay some special attention to?
Well, for me, it's all about community. I think that because of how we've lived and how technology has taken over, we've fractured the individual and we've fractured and dissociated our communities. And we're in such need of getting a closer knit family, tribe, community, society. We need it. We need it to thrive. So I always try to get myself involved with organizations that are very much grassroots and who believe in the power of community. And through the years, I mean, there's been the Fit Spirit Foundation that encourages young Canadian girls across this country to get moving, because 1 out of 2 teenagers will stop doing sports when they start puberty, which is having a huge impact on their mental health. And so that's one. They're in schools all over. So that's a great organization. I'm also a national volunteer for the Canadian Mental Health Association. They have 330 offices throughout the country, and they're very community based, and there's always mental health services out there. There's an overflow of people suffering, and we don't have enough beds, and that's a whole other conversation. But there are people out there who are willing to help. So if you're listening right now and you're suffering or somebody else is suffering, go to your local CMHA or your local mental health association, because there's always help. Wellness Together Canada is also now the first ever mental health platform run by the government of Canada for all Canadians of all ages and race and religion and culture. We're all there for you, and everybody needs help. Plan Canada, we can do better, because 132 years to wait for gender equality is way too long. I don't want to see my kids and my grandkids not being able to reach equality. And I think it's really important to talk to our boys. It's really important to acknowledge all of our boys' feelings and emotions and what they're going through. And I know I'm ending on this for a reason, because I will fight for women's rights and gender equality until my last breath. And it's so much more than those 2 words. It's about harmony. It's about respect. It's about compassion. It's about emotional awareness. And it's about presence and intimacy. Because at the end of the day, we're all sharing this planet. So we better restructure our systems and ourselves, because if we don't work from the bottom up, we'll never be able to see the summit. And we all deserve to watch the beautiful horizon together, and to be able to see what we're building for generations who will come after us.
So well said. And I do hold that prayer of unity in our heart, because we're all suffering from the patriarchy, men, women, all genders and identities. We're all suffering from this system, and we all need something better, and we need each other. And it's so true. We need each other, and community is the most important thing, that connection, that human connection. Sophie, this has just been such an honor. Thank you so much. We'll link to some of those organizations you mentioned below in the show notes. And it's been such an honor to talk to you.
And it's my time to thank you, because it's all been you giving it to me. But thank you for what you do. Thank you for being the tender, strong warrior that you are. And we're all behind you. So whoever's listening, and to you, Rhiannon, we're going to do this all together. So
Yes,
thank you for everything that you offer to this world.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that and I receive it. I don't know about you all, but that conversation was so special, so beautiful. I'm so glad that all of you got to really hear from Sophie in this more intimate setting because she has so much wisdom to share. So it was such an honor to have her on. And this officially wraps our season, you guys. Season 3 of the Conscious Economics podcast is officially coming to its end with this episode. It's been such an amazing ride to have all of you join us over this season. We have so many new listeners. The podcast is growing, and I just feel so proud of the conversations we've been able to have. Also, super huge shout out to all of the team on the back end that helps make this show possible. So, a really special thank you to Davin and to Jackie, and of course to Jordan. Thank you guys so much. And thank you to all of you that are tuning in. I know I don't do a lot of call outs around ratings or reviews, but if you can and you want to, rate this podcast, review this podcast, send it to friends that you think could benefit from listening to some of the episodes, or go back to some of the episodes that you have really enjoyed over the season and re-listen if you felt like there was a special nugget of wisdom that you want to apply in your life. And so that is that, and we'll see you back hopefully next season for season 4. We usually launch those things in the fall, so I hope you have an amazing rest of your spring and summer, and we will hopefully see you back here for season 4 on the Conscious Economics podcast. Bye for now.